What's good, everybody? It's me, Tim Keys, and I'm back with another video. Yeah, trying to do a reason comparison shootout, and I wanted to divide this up into three different parts. I had the initial video up, and I was getting some feedback that was saying that there were some issues with the volume from the synthesizers. I want to check to make sure stuff is going through. Wonderful. It looks like everything is coming through. So thank you for the heads up. And yeah, basically I'm using Cakewalk for this video because it's the easiest way for me to utilize all of my VSTs, VST3s, VST2s, the whole shot, all in one comprehensive DAW. If you haven't used Cakewalk, aka formerly known as Sonar Pro, if you haven't used that before, you should check it out. It's free. It has a boatload of features. Very good for what it can do. Takes a long time to get used to, but the company is always, putting new features in to enhance the experience for the users. I just want to make sure that's good to go. I'm paranoid because the last time I did this, it was not happening. So again, I just want to make sure all my volumes is up. So basically, this video is for the individual who, you know, they've tried Reason or are somewhat apprehensive about buying Reason. They may not want to buy Reason and get it as a DAW, but they hear about Reason as a plugin and they want to know how it holds up. And so I figured that's what this video series would be about. How does Reason hold up compared to some of the other instrument plugin bundles that are out there? How does Reason hold up to, Native Instruments? How does Reason hold up to Arturia? And so this is the first video redone, but this is the first video in a 3 or 4 part series that will go over those features to help you as a consumer make a decision about Reason and its sonics. And in my opinion, you might be pleasantly surprised, but I'll save my 2 cents to the very, very end of the last video before I give my 2 cents. But we'll get started. So if you're using Reason, and I'm going to assume that you're not someone that already has Suite, you're not someone that is using the subscription, but you're someone who decides to make the purchase of buying Reason 12, the DAW itself, this is what you're going to get in terms of how it operates as a plugin. If you get Suite, you're going to have a different set of plugins that you get to utilize. If you use the subscription, again, you're going to have a few more additional plugins that you get to utilize within the rack. But if you just buy Reason 12 out of the gate, then these are some of the features that you will have. And so for your instruments, you'll have the Kong, the Kong Drum Designer, the Redrum, the Dr. Octo Rex Loop Player, the Europa wavetable synthesizer, the Grain sample playback device, the Mimic creative sample, which is new to Reason 12, Thor, you'll have Subtractor, you'll have Maelstrom Grain table synth, you'll have a monotone bass, you'll have the ID8, which is a good general MIDI device. You'll have the drum machine, rhythmic, as they call it. You'll have Radical Piano. You'll have Clang, Pangea, Umana. You'll have the NNXT and the NN19 and a MIDI out device. So those are the devices that you will get if you are just using Reason 12. For plugins, not plugins, pardon me, effects. I'm waiting on it to upload. For effects, you'll get the chorus ensemble, you'll get the sweeper modulation effect, you get the alligator filter gate, you get the pulverizer, the echo, the scream distortion, a vocoder, which is really works as a vocoder, and you can do some nice stuff with that. You get the reverb MK2, which has convolution responses that you can put in. You get the Neptune, which is Reason's version of auto-tune. Not bad. It's got some very powerful features if you know how to work it. You have soft tube amp, audiomatic transformer, a couple of EQs and compressors that they took from their version of the SSL board that they emulated, a bass amp, some more modulation effects, some more compressors and imagers and equalizers, some reverbs, delays, some distortions, and so forth. And yep, you get a bunch of stuff. You get your combinator, your arpeggiators, your LFOs, splitters and mergers, and you get your players, your arpeggiators, your beat maps, your note echoes, and your scales and chords. You don't get these, not if you're just coming in clean from Reason 12. So I got Kong already loaded up because I wanted to make sure that the volume is coming through. I'm checking that signal because I'm paranoid this time around. And so with Kong is nice because you get a nice basic drum synthesizer, if you will, where you have a nice 16 pad layout similar to your MPC. You can drag your samples in and put them in any of these 16 slots and get to work. You can do some multi-assigning so that certain drum pads might correspond with more than one hit. So if you program this and wanted to get deep into it, you could have this bass drum, if I wanted to, trigger like more than one note, but only have to hit one pad. So they have things like that out of the gate. And I know you might be thinking like, all right, other DAWs have that ability. FL Studio has their own take on this. Bitwig has its own take. Waveform, Ableton, they have their own take. But what made the Kong Drum Designer really stick out was its ability to let you sculpt your own sounds. So you have things here like physical modeling drum loop. Come on. Nope, I was in the wrong spot. We'll use this. I'm using my keyboard. There we go. So you can literally shape these tones however you want. To get a wide variety of tones. So, yeah, I'll do another one real quick just for the sake of time. I don't want to be on this one too long. And yeah, I shot this video. This is my third time. Hopefully, the third time will be a charm. Come on. I want to take that out. And so you have physical modeling, acoustic drums, as well as your physical model synth-based type drums. So you can definitely get that 808 sound in. Put your overdrive on it. There we go. I was like, it's not loud enough. I need the ring. Yeah. So that's one of the nice things about Kong. So yeah, you get to really sculpt your drum sounds. Of course, there's Redrum, the drum computer, and it's another device that allows you to put your samples in, and you can kind of like in FL Studio, if you were set in that workflow and you were coming in from FL Studio to Reason and you wanted to program your drums, then Redrum would allow you in limited capacity to do that. And I say in limited capacity because once you put in, you go into the piano roll, things would be a little bit different. But, you can get busy. I will say as a heads up, you cannot sample into the devices when you're in plugin mode, which is kind of a bummer. And I kind of understand why they do this, just because in Reason, it's dealing with its own ecosystem. So being able to sample is fairly straightforward. Whereas in, they may have, based on how they coded some stuff and programmed some stuff, they just put that limitation there, or that limitation is there as a consequence to how this is coded. It would be nice if they were to update this in a way that you were able to sample not only in the standalone version of the instrument, but being able to sample directly to the instrument as a plugin, kind of like you can do in Halion. So that's one thing to consider. Kind of a bummer. So that's just FYI. Let's see. I've already done videos on grain. I did a video doing the strengths and weaknesses between like a grain and something like Bitwig's sampler, which Bitwig sampler is amazing. And if you haven't seen that video, you should check it out. So I'm not going to I won't cover grain. I won't cover mimic. I won't do the NNXT just because I've already covered those. This is Europa. Europa's been out since 2017. It's a really good wavetable synthesizer in my opinion. And as of 2018, they gave you the ability to import waveforms, and you can use those waveforms in one of the oscillators. That's the drawback. You get the ability to put in your samples. So if you got Serum or if you got a sample, whatever you got, you can take that and throw it in the user wave. And, you go into your oscillator, click on the arrow, and you would pick either user wave or user wave smooth. And then you could just go and make the adjustments on the waveform as you deem appropriate. You got your filter, different types of filters that you can use. These filters are nice because it really will give some flexibility and stretch the sound. And for each oscillator, you got different filters that you can use. So for the spectrum filter, oscillator 1 could have one type, oscillator 2 could have something different, oscillator 3 and so forth. Like all of this is interchangeable and reprogrammable. The only thing that you can't reprogram is this. It would be a nice reason if you updated this to allow people the ability to use a user waveform in all 3 of the wavetables. I don't know what the logic behind this was, and it's not really my concern. Just know that if you're using Europa, you cannot use more than one of your user wavetables for the entire synth. But what you can do is, let's say you wanted to make a customized waveform, you can use one of these envelopes here, 3 or 4, as a way of going in and, you know, basically adjusting things however you like to get your sound. It's been so long since I've drawn on these to make my own stuff, but it's pretty straightforward. And then once you have that, now you got your waveform as a start. And that's pretty much it. You got your filter section, your main filter section, which every oscillator will have the option to go through this filter. Your amplitude envelope. Again, you got 4 envelopes for your filters to choose from, 3 LFOs, and a modulation matrix and an effects unit right out the gate. And in my opinion, Europa sounds really good. I'll pick a patch out or 2 if I can find it. Let's see, we'll go into texture. Electromagnetic. I've used this. To program some nice sound. Yeah, so there are some nice patches in these devices. If you're looking for sound, you know, Reason doesn't disappoint in the sounds. I know the DAW, the DAW, depending on your workflow, the DAW may leave a lot to be desired, but the plugin as a whole is not bad. Take that out. I'm gonna do an oldie but goodie. Clicking on Thor. I'm waiting on it to load up. It's like, please don't break. There we go. I'll show the program, and I'll reset this. So yeah, Thor was like a powerhouse for Reason back in the day, and in some ways it's still pretty good. In my opinion, it could use an update, but you know, just because it looks dated and it's over 10 years old, you can get some great sounds out of this still to this day. You got your standard, you got 3 oscillators to choose from, and you have your standard oscillator, your wavetable oscillators that have real wavetable, including some of the PPG waveforms from those synths, and you got a mod matrix. So I could take a LFO if I can find it. And we'll go to position. So now I got some movement. And that's just one oscillator. You got phase modulation, which was kind of their take on the synth engines that were behind the Casios back in the day. And you got 7 waveforms on one side and then 7 waveforms on another side. Or no, 5 waveforms on that side. Pardon me. I'm glad I did this video over. 5 waveforms on that side. And yeah, again, you can stack them up. 3 layers. You got an FM engine, which you got 32 different waveforms for the modulation and the carrier. You can dial up the amount of FM that you want. It's a lot more straightforward than using a DX7, so it's limited compared to using a DX7, but you can get some great sounds out of this. You got the multi-oscillator, and you got the option to adjust the waveforms using these options. Again, to really stretch your tone. That's supposed to be detune mode. So, yeah, you can really push your sonics. Then you have a noise oscillator. Shame on me. I'm going to turn that one off. Put it back up here. And again, if you're into drum synthesis, this is for you. A lot of drum sounds, a lot of sounds in general have been made using Thor. Thor is nothing to sleep on in terms of, its sonic capabilities. It just happens to be old, very old. That's terrible. I don't mean that as a knock to Reason. It is really good. It's just that I remember when Thor came out back in 2007, and people went nuts. If you were a Reason user, people went nuts over Thor because it was like, man, all the stuff that you can do. And you could program all sorts of crazy stuff using this. Matter of fact, I'll throw this in here. Yeah, so you got a lot of different filters that you can use. You got 4 different filter types. Your low pass ladder, which is from your Moog inspired filters, your state variable filters from your Oberheims, your comb filters, make it positive or negative, and then your format filters. So yeah, there's a lot here. So yeah, that format filter, it makes a world of difference. So there's that. I'll say this about Thor before I move on. Thor was, I remember we were doing a project, me and a friend, a while back, 10 years ago, and we recorded a bass line using a synth, and we were using Reason 6 at the time, and Reason 6 couldn't quantize audio. Like, it was terrible for that. So you had to get that take like pitch perfect, right on the money, if you were recording audio in the Reason, because if not, it was going to be a pain in the butt trying to like realign that audio to make it fit with the rest of the song. So I recorded a bass line from a synth that I had at the time, and because it didn't line up exactly right to the T on the tempo, I was like, man, I took it out, and I was going to re-record the bass line, and instead I pulled up Thor, and I modified a patch, and I made that patch sound exactly like the hardware synth. I kid you not, no cap. So Thor is pretty good. These devices are good for what they do. I'll do one more example. Let's see what we got. I'll do a couple more. Then there's the mouse drum grain table. And again, if I can let this thing load up, it is very powerful. This was the OG granular synth / wavetable synth, if you will, because it combined the two technologies, and you were able to implement those technologies in a very unique way using this program, or this particular device, sorry. And so you have a bunch of different sounds that you could utilize and pick. And the nice thing about it, I'm going to turn this filter off. You got your motion. It's kind of how it is from the granular side. Then you have the index. Not too much there. Let's go to added waves. So that becomes like your wavetable. And you can just go up the index. And you can set this up to go. So now I'm doing it automatically using this. And then I got the shift. And that's all in one oscillator. Let me see if I can flip it to the back. It's kind of slow. So yeah, if I flip it to the back, then I have more options to utilize where I can do some CV routing. It's been so long since I did this. Let's see, mod output, mod A, mod B. I want to do the shift, and I want to do it straight up to, there we go. So yeah, now I don't have to like hit that shift knob all the time. I could just do it from behind the rack, if you will. That's a good, yeah, that could be a good bass lead. I'm really not trying to do a whole lot of playing, but you kind of get the idea of what you can do with this sound. And yeah, there are a boatload of patches. And if you got refills for this, or if you could find refills for these devices, yeah, you greatly expand the sonic palette of these devices. The main thing about Reason as a rack, which makes it appealing, so to speak, is not necessarily the drums, although the drum, like the Kong drum designer, is nice. It's not necessarily the samples, because as a plug-in, you cannot sample into these devices. But what's nice about these devices is the fact that you can stack them up and layer them and get a visual representation of these devices in a way that you won't get in another plugin. So if you're really good with CV routing, you can stack, you can layer, you can actually, I won't use this one. I'll use this one if I haven't messed it up already. Come on. I'm gonna reset this. Good old faithful subtractor. It's its own take on, like, analog synthesis. It doesn't have a very hard tone like a Moog, but it has a very good sound in its own right. But what's nice about Reason is you get to stack different instruments, layer them together. If you're good at CV routing, you could take all of these devices in ways that they work, congruently with one another to create different effects. Like the Maelstrom that I pulled up earlier, not only is it an instrument, but you can also use it as an effect and take something like your subtractor and run it through the Maelstrom. And that Maelstrom, if you know how to route the instruments, that Maelstrom will process the sound from the subtractor to get a very different tone. Same thing with the Thor. The Thor is a synth in its own right, but I could take something like a grain and run it through Thor's filters to get sounds that I would not be able to get using grain alone, because grain doesn't have the same type of filters that Thor has. So there are things like that that make this really unique. Yeah, I'm not gonna build a giant super patch, but that's one of the pros with Reason. Another thing that is unique with Reason, because of its combinator, and I'll do this quick before I'm out. When you buy Reason, you have the ability to not only use the sounds that come with Reason, if you have bought third-party rack extensions from other companies, such as, fill in the blank, you can use those with Reason. And so I got a couple of different additive synthesizers that I'm gonna throw in once they get done loading up and it's thinking. And now, yes, you can do this, to balance it out. Can I take Ableton, use their instrument rack, and, do the same thing, so to speak? Like, can I take the instrument rack and load up my favorite VSTs and stack the sounds and, you know, stack and layer and create different types of instruments or effects, using those instrument racks in something like Ableton or Bitwig? Yes. But this is another way of doing things. So yeah, I'm just stacking. I haven't added effects or anything like that. I want to be cognizant about time. So yeah, Reason, in my opinion, in terms of the sounds, can hold its own. If you have Reason, I wouldn't dismiss it solely because of the update if the update is not to your liking, because the sonics that are available to you and what you can do with the different instruments and the different effects and the different players. I haven't even bothered to touch player, but I'll throw one in there. It's gonna sound terrible, but I'll throw it in there. So yeah, the way you go about building sounds and creating tones and all of that stuff it's very intuitive for what they offer. And even though there are other plugins that will allow you to do the same thing, Reason does have a nice way of doing it in the rack, so to speak. And the sounds, because they offer so much, and if you get rack extensions of different kinds, like Aqueous, for example, you can greatly expand your sound palette. And if you're coming out the gate, like if you're using Reason for the first time and that's your main DAW, then I would say there's nothing wrong with taking that and exploring different rack extensions and finding the sounds that you like and the plugins that you like for that ecosystem and building on it. And because you can take it with you and use it in any DAW, that does give it a level of flexibility that other DAWs don't have. And the instruments aren't bad. You know, you can create, you get the right plugins, you can make whatever sound you want with the right plugins. And if you're someone that likes to program different sounds, then yeah, I would check this out. You know, again, check it out, try it out, see if you like it. And, you know, if you don't like it, that's cool. But sonically speaking, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad at all. I think for what you can do with it and for what, yeah, its sonic palette is pretty good. You're not going to be missing out on any capabilities if you just had Reason as a plugin, and that's what you were starting out with coming out the gate. Reason can hold its own in a lot of areas. And for those who have the Suite Edition, and for those who decide to do the subscription, even though the subscription doesn't, you don't get to keep it, you get access to everything they put out, which you would get access to every form of sound design you could think of, from physical modeling strings to FM to additive to your basic subtractive synthesis, and you know, everywhere in between. You can pretty much, you have a method to make almost every sound you want. So yeah, that's all I got for this video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the folks who watched the last video and stuck it out with me. I appreciate you. Hopefully, I'm double checking because I'm paranoid. Hopefully that audio has been fixed. So yeah, thank you for watching. It's Tim Keys and I'm out. Deuces.